battle it out. Tom Ross, he's on Infect, ranked 22nd on our leaderboard. Danny West is on Maverick. Let's see what they got going on.
Now, more importantly, we've got a leather jacket against a scarf. I'm not really sure how that plays out. Usually,
I like the scarf.
Yeah, usually I give the edge to the leather jacket, but that scarf is looking pretty fine.
So Tom is just going to lead on a Tropical Island and a Glistener Elf, and this game could be over next turn.
I mean, I'm still on the scarf leather jacket thing, you know. You're moving a little too fast for me, buddy.
Well, Danny's just going to go ahead and snap off a Wasteland on Tom's Tropical Island.
And a lot of Danny's best ways of interacting are to choke Tom off mana. You had mentioned Thalia as being one of the ways to do that, but getting Knight of the Reliquary and Wastelands going is certainly one of the other ways.
So Tom's just going to use the Misty Rainforest to go find another copy of Tropical Island. And let's see what he has going on here.
And now Tom's going to have a pretty good idea of what's going on.
So he's going to use Gitaxian Probe, paying some life down to 17. Danny's going to reveal Windswept Heath, Noble Hierarch, Knight of the Reliquary, Mother of Runes, a Forest, Green Sun Zenith, and a Thalia. So this is a decent hand that does quite a bit. A very good hand on the play, but on the draw, he's stuck being pretty reactive.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen Danny play the Noble Hierarch on turn 1 so that he could turn to Wasteland and Thalia. I'm a little surprised that he didn't make that play, quite frankly, but pretty interesting that he just snapped off the Wasteland. Danny is an extremely good Maverick player. He's been playing the deck for a while, as you had mentioned before, so I'd have to assume that whatever he's doing is the right play.
So Tom's going to go ahead and Brainstorm and not Berserk. There's he grabbed the wrong card out of his hand, but just knowing that he has the Berserk and Invigorate would have just killed Danny this turn.
Yeah.
How insane is that?
Yeah, while it's certainly smart of Danny to Wasteland on turn 1 to make sure he doesn't just get turn 1 killed, he's kind of still stuck in the same situation next turn. And, you know, it's not exactly treading water when your opponent has a creature on the board attacking and you just don't have anything.
So Tom's going to go ahead and use a Verdant Catacombs after his Brainstorm is resolved. Going to shuffle away those bad cards. He's going to go find a copy of Tropical Island, and he already played a land this turn because he got Wastelanded. So we're going to have to try and correct this. But he had already put 2 cards back on top from the Brainstorm.
So looks like a little bit of a messy situation. I'm sure the judges will figure it out, but irregardless, definitely a situation or a game state that is going to be favoring Tom either way. He has land drops, he has some cantrips, he's going to be able to, you know, search through his deck to kind of sculpt the scenario he wants. And the fact that he already has a creature on the board and has knowledge of Danny's hand has to bode well for, you know, Tom moving forward with his game plan.
So while they resolve that with the land, we're going to go ahead and come back to the booth here. These are 2 players that I know quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
Danny.
They probably know each other pretty well, too.
Well, I mean, one is the other's boss.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder.
Just throwing that one out there.
Do you think, like, they just, you know, Tuesday afternoon, they just battle Maverick versus Infect?
Well, Danny lives in Philadelphia now, so he's local
okay,
here. He's no longer in Roanoke.
Right.
But I imagine as they're going to the table, Danny was just like, hey, if you want to keep your job, you might want to play an extra land and try and throw this match.
I see. So the plot thickens. It all makes sense now.
So yeah, 2 great guys. Tom has put in a lot of work playing Magic. Danny is one of my favorite people. In fact, when I was working for Star City, still living in Roanoke, for a little bit before I transitioned to the role that I was in there for the majority of the time, I worked as a buyer. And so my first and only show that I worked as a buyer, I worked with Danny West. Him and I were the 2 buyers. And he streams a lot, and he's big into video game speedrunning.
Oh, really?
And so
those are great. Speedruns are awesome.
So on the way to the show, he's just like playing some like Tiny Toons game on his computer, just like speedrunning it. And I'm just like sitting here watching him, and I'm like, God, how are you so good at this? I'm not that good at anything.
Oh, you're good at plenty of things. Come on.
He currently has I believe, the world record for the game, the Tiny Toons game that he was playing. And it's just like, man, this is so insane. A really funny story there is, in that game, there's a mini game that happens after each round, and there's a wheel that spins and you get a random character on it. And so like there's ways to, like if you stop it at a certain time, then you can like skip certain characters because some are faster than the other. But the worst was Plucky Duck, and the entire drive down to where we were going for the event, all I hear is just Plucky every time he hits it, and it ruins one of his good runs.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. One of the things that I love about Magic so much is you meet such awesome people. I mean, out of all the communities that I've been involved with, Magic players are just the best. We just have the smartest, most talented, most handsome people in the world.
So let's go ahead and go back to the game. It looks like they got everything fixed. I believe Tom is just going to get a game rule violation. Hopefully he doesn't do it anymore so it gets upgraded. But the game state has been corrected back to what it should be. And so Danny gets to go take his turn and hope he doesn't die the next turn.
Yep. And again, I think this is probably a situation that favors Tom. Danny really needs to get something going on. The one thing that's good about firing off the Wasteland right away on his turn is if he can top deck a Swords to Plowshares, it's pretty good for him because then he gets to answer the creature if he so chooses, but looks like he's playing around a daze.
Yeah, so he had Swords to Plowshares and decided to not use it, just played a Noble Hierarch instead, and it looks like Tom just found a copy of Invigorate. So there's a chance that he just kills Danny here with Invigorate and Berserk.
Yeah. Definitely showcasing the explosiveness of Tom's deck and the fact that, the Maverick deck is usually looking to play a bit of a slower game, and Tom is just not going to give him the time to do that.
Nope, he's just trying to get him dead.
Yeah.
So there's the Noble Hierarch. He's going to attack, Invigorate, and Berserk, and that's all she wrote.
Kaboom!
12 trample. Infect.
And that little infect creature is pumped.
Again, the Tarmogoyf Gym.
Yeah,
where can I get a membership to this Tarmogoyf Gym?
Yep.
So Tom Ross is going to take game one here against Danny West in a very quick, 3 turns. That's what happens a lot when you have a fair deck versus a non-fair deck.
Leather Jacket 1, Scarf 0.
All right, well, hopefully the Scarf can even it up. Let's take a look at the sideboards and see how these players are going to sideboard. So Danny West has a Titania, Protector of Argoth, 3 Zealous Persecution, which seemed great in this matchup.
Yeah.
2 Other Sworn Canonist, a Scavenging Ooze, 3 Thoughtseize, 2 Surgical Extraction, Choke, Armageddon, and a Sword of Worn Piece. How do you think Danny's going to sideboard?
Oh man, the Armageddon takes me back. Armageddon was like the first real deck that I ever had. But in terms of sideboarding, I think, like you mentioned, the Zealous Persecutions are going to be great. Not only can they deal with one of Tom's infect creatures, but it can get Dryad Arbor or Noble Hierarch, also has basically collateral damage. He may also want to bring in either Sworn Canonist, just because a lot of Tom's plays involve playing multiple spells on one turn. And so either Sworn Canonist, while it's not quite as good as Thalia, it can, fulfill a similar role. Thoughtseize is another good card. Tom's deck is essentially a combo deck, and just breaking up the combo with the Thoughtseize can be helpful. Choke and Armageddon are also cards that could be brought in. Choke in particular, I think, is going to be the really, really good one. I'm not 100% sure he'll bring in Armageddon, but I have to imagine if he has it, he's inclined to bring it in here.
So we've got Krosan Grip, Hydroblast, 2 Submerge, a Bajuka Bog, a Flusterstorm, a Seal of Primordium, a Necropede, a Force of Will, a Caracas, a Wasteland, a Viridian Corruptor, a Dismember, a Crop Rotation, and a Surgical Extraction for Tom. What do you think he's going to do?
So I don't think Tom wants to be that interactive. I think similar to the previous game, he's looking to just goldfish a quick win. That said, the cards that I think can be particularly useful are Crop Rotation is one that jumps out at me as a card that is really good against opposing decks that have Wasteland, because if they go to Wasteland your land and your Crop Rotate it, that's just pretty good for you. Danny West does have some big problematic creatures, so I could see Tom Ross also bringing in cards like Dismember and Submerge. Those can be quite potent plays as well. And then also, if Tom wants to get really interactive, he could also bring in cards like Krosan Grip or Seal of Primordium, so that he has a way to deal with the problematic equipment cards such as Umezawa's Jite that can really put a stranglehold on the game, or Choke.
Now, when I lived in Roanoke, I did get to play with Tom quite a bit. Never really in the Versus videos, but we always seemed to run into each other when we were playing in StarCityGames.com game night.
Yep.
So let's take a look at some game nights, some sweet swag that you get here for doing well.
Magus of the Moo!
We got Magus of the Moo for February. Got tokens and pins. Coming up next month in March, we're going to have Grim Llamamancer, which is pretty sweet. We got this pin right here.
I believe we got the pins on today.
And then we got the new one coming up in April, and it's going to be Slobberin Mile Driver. So we need to come up with a name for this one. So for those of you on Twitter, make sure you hit up Andy and I with some names.
Get in contact with us on Twitter. We've had quite a people message us today with all kinds of comment telling us we're doing a good job or telling us we're doing a bad job. I like the people that tell us we're doing a good job, honestly.
I mean, but I like them all.
Yeah.
I like hearing it nonetheless.
Yeah, one kind of comment's good for my head. The other kind of comment's good for my ego. But but definitely, if you guys have a fun name to put on this card, let us know, because someone had suggested Anna for the llama, which was really cool, and it's just one of the ways to make these things extra fun.
Yep. So we got go.starcitygames.com/game night. Now here's something that I actually want to ask you. A lot of people have opinions on this.
Yeah.
What do you think about the pile shuffle after game 1 before game 2?
So I know,
as we see Danny West.
I know what
here.
Patrick Sullivan thinks of it, and he hates it. I mean, he just goes on a tear talking about how we're all wasting our lives, and I certainly understand how time is valuable. The one thing that I wish I had was more time. That said, there's been 1 or 2 times where I got a game lost because I boarded into a 59 card deck, and getting a loss for that reason for me is just unforgivable. And so I will always do at least 1 pile shuffle just to make sure that I have 60 cards. So I think 1 pile shuffle is kind of the perfect number. It doesn't waste too much time, and it just saves you from that horrible thing happening of you losing a game without even being able to play any of your cards.
Yeah, I do a pile shuffle before every game.
Yeah.
And the reason for this is because I do it the exact same way.
Yeah.
Because it's my pregame ritual.
Yeah,
so
that's the other thing.
I find as I am becoming an old man and getting older and older, I am becoming an extreme creature of habit. So I don't know if it's OCD or not.
Yeah.
But if I don't do my pile shuffle and feel like I shuffled my deck either sufficiently or the same way as I did before, or if it doesn't feel right, I won't play the game right.
Yeah,
and it's weird, and it's me, and it's my fault. And if I take an extra 30 seconds away from my opponent for having to do that, then sorry, man. I'm here to have fun too, and this is how I'm going to have fun.
Yeah, I'm with you on it. I mean, I will sit down. I'll do my pile shuffle. I'll do a few, riffle shuffles or whatever. I'll go through my sideboard. I always have my sideboard organized in the exact same order. And for me, when I sit down, again, it's essentially how you said, it's a pregame ritual. And for me, step 1 of winning a match is pile shuffling. That's step 1.
It's not even conscious. Like, I count the cards when I do it.
Yeah.
Go through my shuffling, but it's like, that's not even what I'm thinking about. That's just what I'm conditioned to do.
Yeah, exactly. And it really is conditioning. It really is just sort of priming yourself, getting yourself in the right mental state. Those habits end up being a cue to sort of tell yourself that, well, it's time to play Magic, get focused. You were talking to your friends before, but now we are down to business.
So it looks like Tom has taken a potty break. While he's doing that, let's take a look at our player profile for Tom Ross. He is 32 years young. It still makes me feel old because I'm older than he is. He lives in Roanoke, Virginia. He has 9 open top 8s, 2 wins, 3 invitational top 8s with 2 wins, which were back-to-back.
Yeah.
He used to do parkour and can still do backflips. I didn't know that, and that is awesome.
That is
I want to
awesome.
see Tom Ross do a backflip.
Yeah, we got to get that on camera.
He is a Mortal Kombat X enthusiast specialized in Melina. I have actually sat at his house and watched him play Mortal Kombat X, and he is awesome at Mortal Kombat X. I wonder if he can play while he does backflips. He's also a 5-time Louisiana State champion in Magic. That's pretty sweet, too.
Yeah, Tom is really good. I remember so I was telling you before how I forget when in the cast we were talking about this, but how the first tournament that the first Grand Prix that I cashed was with Bloodbraid Elf. At that tournament, the big breakout deck was Boss Naya. And that was Tom Ross's creation way back then. I mean,
the old Scoop Mob?
Yeah, it was LSV was playing it. All of the, people who were Channel Fireball back then were playing it. For those of you who don't know, Tom Ross has just been one of the great players for a long time. And there's been times where he's a little more active and a little less active. He's been the deck builder for decks that Pantheon has piloted in recent Pro Tours. Tom Ross is someone who, he probably doesn't go to as many tournaments as some of the other quote-unquote pros, but if he did, he would have way more top 8s. I mean, when we're looking at that slide, he's got a decent number of top 8s at Opens, but he's got a lot of top 8s in invitationals, two of which are wins, which is just really insane. So you can see that he's someone who rises to the occasion and someone who may not go to a whole lot of events, but the ones he does go to, he just does real well.
So let's go ahead and start our match off. For those of you just joining us, we got Tom Ross on Infect, who is up a game against Danny West, who is on Maverick. So Danny's going to go ahead and use a Windswept Heath to go find presumably a dual land, and then Green Sun's Zenith for 0 for a Dryad Arbor. So we're going to get a Bayou and a Dryad Arbor. And this is the kind of start that he's going to need to try and apply some pressure to Tom, while at the same time being able to try and break up what he's got going on with things like Thalia, Source to Plowshares, and Abrupt Decay.
Yeah, and this is really becoming a pretty consistent theme throughout the day, whether it's Delver decks who are playing Deathrite Shaman, whether it's Eldrazi decks who are playing Ayavukin, and we've seen Green Sun Zenith have this play also, where players are trying to get ahead on mana. We even saw it in the Miracles versus the Lands matchup. Those players were trying to get ahead on mana in order to win. And this matchup is no different in a lot of ways. One of the best ways to get an advantage in a game is to get ahead on mana. Once you are ahead on that mana, then you can start leveraging that to a victory.
So Tom's going to go down to 19 using a Verdant Catacombs. He's going to find a basic forest, a little wasteland-proof action, and just play a Noble Hierarch. So Danny can live in safety knowing that he's not going to die next turn while he continues to develop his board. But it looks like Tom does have an Inkmoth Nexus in his hand and some pumps, so that could change very quickly for Danny.
Yeah, fortunately, Inkmoth Nexus is one of the cards that is a little easier for Danny to interact with, because not only can he find removal spells, but he can also find Wasteland.
So Danny's going to go ahead and play a basic Plains here, and then cast Green Sun Zenith for 2. Does he have a Malira in his deck? Please tell me he has a Malira in his 75.
Don't know. If he doesn't have a Malira, I have to imagine he's going to get Thalia.
It didn't look like he had a Malira. Well, Green Sun can't get Thalia. It can get Gadok Teak.
Oh, Gadok Teak, yeah.
What does that really shut off in Tom's deck, though? Force of Will?
Does it shut off Invigorate? How much is Invigorate to cast?
3. So it shuts off Force of Will. It shuts off the Green Sun Zenith. It shuts off Become a Mance. But that's it.
Yeah, those are some decent targets.
But it also shuts off the Green Sun Zenith that's in Danny's hand.
Well, Danny probably doesn't need all of his cards to win.
That's true.
So Danny's cards are all individually very powerful. Tom's cards need to work together. So Danny can easily win without all of his cards, where Tom is likely to need almost all of his cards to win. Did I just say the same thing twice in a row?
I don't know, probably.
Oh man, it's been a long day, buddy.
So Tom is just going to lay an Inkmoth Nexus. He's going to cast a Noble Hierarch and a Seal of Primordium and pass it back to Danny. So Danny does have this Gadok Teak. Looks like he has a Swords to Plowshares in his hand. What's he going to do here?
And ideally, Tom would be able to put himself in a situation where he can have multiple Infect creatures on the board and make it so that Danny is essentially whichever one Danny kills, Tom can pump the other.
So Danny's just going to play a Noble Hierarch, get in for 3 with his Gadok Teak from the Exalted Trigger, and then cast a Thalia. So that seems like it's a pretty good turn.
Yeah. While Tom does have a fair amount of mana, that Thalia is still going to be problematic.
So Tom is going to fire up this Inkmoth Nexus. He does have two copies of Noble Hierarch, which will give it some little Exalted action.
So one thing that's nice for Tom is he knows that Danny can't play Swords to Plowshares. Danny has that Noble Hierarch available, but that Thalia makes a Swords cast an extra mana. So Tom is going to be able to get in for a pretty big hit here.
So we've got an Invigorate. It's going to give Danny 3 life, but make his Nexus be a 4/4 or a 5/5. The 2 on the Exalted is going to be 7.
And this is pretty good for Tom. This is a pretty big hit. He doesn't have to do
It's going to put Danny
that
to
much
dead
more
next turn.
infect.
Yeah, the Nexus will be a 3/3 next turn on the attack, so Tom has lethal next turn.
So regarding combo decks, one thing that's pretty sweet about the Infect deck is if you think of it in a combo sense, where it's trying to pair a Infect creature with pump spells, the one thing that's unique about it is most combo decks, they need to do their whole combo on one turn, generally speaking. But Tom's deck is pretty interesting in that it can do part of its combo one turn, and then part of the combo the next turn. And that's basically what we're seeing here. Tom can't get in for the full amount of Infect damage, but he's able to get in for a big chunk while the shields are down. And then he can pick a good spot to deal the rest later on.
Not only that, but with Noble Hierarch, at this point, any Infect creature is going to be lethal.
Yeah.
So, Tom does have a copy of Crop Rotation in his hand, so when he fires up this Inkmoth Nexus and attacks with it, even if Danny happens to have like a Swords to Plowshares for it, he could just Crop Rotate it into another Nexus and have lethal next turn.
Yeah, Crop Rotation is pretty sweet. I've gotten blown out by Crop Rotation a few times, I'm not going to lie.
It's one of those weird cards that greatly increases the what people can do.
It's funny because I was playing against Infect on a stream this past week, and I'm talking through my plays, and I'm talking about wastelanding my opponent's Inkmoth Nexus and when to do it because I'm so worried about Crop Rotation. And then people in the chat were like, dude, don't they only play like one Crop Rotation, man? And I'm like, I don't care. I just always need to play around it because they always have it.
So Tom is going to go ahead and Crop Rotate his Tropical Island into a Wasteland, kill the Bayou, and this is going to shut off Abrupt Decay. So now Tom can go and attack with this Nexus, and it's going to be lethal. Danny does have a Plow, but Tom is going to be able to play Vines of the Vastwood, not kicked, to protect his Nexus from the Swords to Plowshares, and still get in this 3 points of damage.
Yeah. And that is that. Tom Ross takes the game in a crushing blow. Pretty sweet. Tom Ross is just too strong. Leather Jacket 2, Scarf 0. Mostly I think it just comes down to Tom being the boss.
And